What up? Welcome to the We Are One podcast. My name's Steve. I'm one of the pastors with We Are One, and this is not an exaggeration, because I know sometimes this is just said, these are some of my favorite people on planet Earth. And specifically, this is one of my best friends and his way too good for him wife. This is John, and this is Nikki. Wow. And I mean that sincerely because, like, he and I are just, like, being idiots, and, like, we asked Nikki to pray right before we started, and it was just like the Holy Spirit descends, and she just brought it into such perspective that I'm like, man, you don't deserve this. Also, we're very, very good friends, so if we say mean things to each other, it's sarcasm, and it's out of love.
Purely affection.
Purely affection. So we're going to discuss a topic that I think is really interesting because you guys have lived this, like, very, very deeply on various different levels. So here's the thought. Let's just start here. What did life look like 2013? What were you guys up to?
2013.
So we're going to start in the middle of the story, and we'll work our way around. What was life in 2013?
2013, we were, at that time of our life, years began and ended according to rains in Africa. So 2013, we would have been 2 years into our missionary journey. In
where?
East Africa. So we were in Tanzania, living in Tanzania, a town called Kigoma, which is on the shores of Lake Tanganyika. It's the interior border of Tanzania, right across the water from Congo, about an hour and a half south of Burundi.
And that journey started 2012?
For our family, yeah. Both of us have missions history, particularly in Africa. Mine was vicarious missions history through friends and family and deep associations. Nikki's was actually her family. They began.
So let's start. How did you grow up? Like, what was life?
So, like, life was basic, everyday. Dad was construction worker. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. My mom had this invitation to go with a friend to go visit some missionary friends of ours in Tanzania.
And it was just like a normal, like, missions trip.
It's
like very traditional.
Just accompanying.
Just like what you do.
Just accompanying an older lady, so she wasn't traveling alone. She was visiting her children. So, like, up until then, life
it was just like normal American
American life. So my mom goes on this missions trip. Her life gets literally turned upside down by.
And I never knew this part of the story until
nothing
very
about
recently.
Nikki's family is normal, first of all.
No, but like
even normal American life.
As soon as I heard, like, Donna went on this trip and the Lord grabbed her heart, and they all, because the end story is what, like.
I mean, almost all of my siblings were all in the field as missionaries.
But how long between she goes on that trip and your whole family is living in Tanzania?
It was a matter of 3 years.
and when I heard that, I was like, that is the most Donna thing I have ever, like, she's, like, if you probably don't know her mom, but she's, like, just the most free-spirited, just wild, so intense for the Lord woman maybe I've ever met. Like, your mom is special.
She is hardcore.
She's intense. She's amazing.
She's hardcore.
To put this in perspective, they were basically saved hippies.
That actually makes a lot more.
Yeah,
absolutely. But he's like a military guy.
So, they were saved hippies, kind of living on the edge of how do you survive military life and be hippie stoners on the beach in Virginia Beach, right? They were in that life. Got kind of the East Coast version of the Lonnie Frisbee 70s, late 60s, early 70s Jesus movement. Got witnessed to, ministered to, and the Holy Spirit starts showing up in their life. She's like, everything I've ever been searching for in drugs, reality, awareness, understanding, wholeness, all of that comes in the Holy Spirit. Yeah. And it rocks her life and begins a ripple effect that has now spread backwards and forwards in the family's timeline, right? So the setup for them becoming this domesticated Christian family is that was really what's in their bones. Yeah. They don't have any grid for that being missions until she steps out and goes on this trip, and her eyes get open to this.
But I think what's interesting, even hearing the story though, is it's fascinating to me how the Lord takes, like, he works all things together for your good, right? Like how he takes the way of life that you gravitated towards in sin as the bedrock for how he uses you in the Spirit. Like, I almost question, like, had they never had this free-spirited hippie experience, did that, like, give them the grid, like you say, to, like, be able to go, let's send it. Like, okay, let's move it. Because you guys were in New York?
Yeah,
They were in New York, and it's like, we're going to move 3 kids, like a full 4 kids, a full 6-person family to Africa with, like, no
I feel like
no
that's
experience.
exactly what you said. There was a challenge that, like, she just lived for the challenge, honestly. And so living just a regular life, like, it could be enough, right? But there was a drive in her.
It was, like, not satisfying.
Oh, man, not at all. And so when she was able to experience it, like, this is how life could be. Like, we could be living daily in a way that, I mean, doors are just open, right? Like, the ability, and really, you don't need Africa to live in that sense.
Yeah.
It was just what opened her eyes, right? And so, man,
It
and
was
my
like-
father too, always living on the edge, like fighter jet, like Navy, that was his jam. And you put him in the field, you put him third world, you put him in a challenge, and he is going to meet that challenge. And
Which is very, like, missionary DNA.
sure.
You know what I mean? It's
Sure.
like, it's just fascinating to me. It's the Lord, like, obviously trains you into the thing he's going to call you into. But there is a certain sense, I think, where he, like, takes, like, the way he designed you, and it, like, what's going on in your eyes right now? What's wrong with your face? What's wrong with your face? Did you see him, like?
Because I on one hand, I
Yeah.
totally agree. On another hand, this is kind of my life's mission.
So that's what I was going to do next. So give me, so you guys end up in 2011. Was it end of 11?
Yep.
So you end up in the same place, ministering with your parents, like a part of a team now doing missions. But how did you guys get there? Because that's not your background. That's not like
let me
your
just hit
family
on
story.
something
Yeah,
before we move to the next chronological step, which is important. You know, yes, the missions DNA is sort of unique, just like the pastoral DNA is sort of unique, right? Any one specific gifting that turns into, I mean, we use all sorts of weird language in the church office, or it turns into assignment, right? Those are all, but the reality, the reality of kingdom life is that those are just the furniture.
Yeah.
The truth is kingdom living in this world is a life of faith. And a life of faith is a life of believing something you cannot see and living as if it's more tangible and real than what we can see. And so the reality is whether that looks domesticated or not, you know, that's where the Africa thing came in for us, right? Because for her family, just like for our family later and what's now my family, the beauty of the Africa part of the story is it shocked us into a place of the unfamiliar. And that's the nature of faith. The nature of faith is the call to Abraham when he was still Abram. Abram, I want to take you somewhere to do something that your father didn't finish doing. But what it requires is that you pack up and leave your father's place. We're going to go somewhere new. I want you to adventure with me into something totally new. And the only way you're going to figure that out is if you go by my voice. There's no roadmap to this place. This is a place that heaven has seen, but you haven't, right? That's the nature of living in the kingdom. And so if we pigeonhole that into that only works for missionaries, we're missing something huge. That is the nature of kingdom living, and I don't care if you're called to youth pastoring, I don't care if you're called to counseling. That DNA is in every single believer. The expression of it is where you find yourself on the globe. It's
and for clarity, what I mean is I'm not built as the guy. I will go to war if the nation or the Lord asks me to. I'm not the guy that runs into conflict.
Got it.
I'm a peacemaker. It's
Perfectly
just, you know what I mean?
understandable.
It's like more my personality.
Yeah.
But the concept of what you just said is really what I want to talk about. Like, I think that's the whole point of what we're talking about is like, you guys are, spoiler alert, no longer missionaries in Africa, right? And we'll get to that in just a minute of sort of how the Lord did that.
Sure.
Are you less called?
Not at all.
That's the,
And
of
that's
course not.
Not
right.
at all.
but of course not is the biblical response. It is the proper language when you truly know the Lord and you have a maturity to understand what he values is not office, like you said.
Yeah.
When you know him at that level, it's of course not. But most people, They see, well, Steve is a pastor, or they were missionaries, or that guy's an evangelist. And they see the office that was designed absolutely to build the church, and like, it has purpose, but they see that and it has more to them, more intrinsic value in the kingdom than their skill sets as a mechanic, right? That is the prevailing Western church opinion right now. That this is a book you turned us on to, that like we make all our college students in We Are One College now go through. Discipleship begins with beholding, and sort of the premise of that book is that God was like, everyone come up and experience my presence, and they were like, no, Moses, go for us, right? And they sent their leader, and then the body, like the bride that God was trying to cultivate, missed out entirely on a moment he was trying to have with them because they let a proxy do it for them instead. And that is like the truest way to describe the Western church right now. So absolutely what you're saying is true, but it's not innate. It's not intrinsically the way most people, I would say, that I come across in the Western church think. Okay. So let's break that down in through the lens of your story. How did, from your perspective or even your background, how did you guys end up in Africa? Like, how did that happen? Because they had this, like, by the time you were born, following the Lord, your family wanted the things of God. We're doing it one way, and then the Lord said, this is what obedience looked like. So then they pivoted and they did something different. That's not how you grew up.
No.
Right.
What did it look
Not
like?
at all. So my background is entirely different. Nikki's family, I always say when I look at her parents, I go, if there's not a family that's more blessed than you, I don't know where they are, because all of your kids are healthy marriages. They're all serving Jesus, right? And that by itself, forget about any of the, accomplishments or ventures. That's beauty, and it's not usual.
So true.
My family, so my mom and dad were divorced twice to each other by the time I was 5 years old. So they got married.
By the time you were 5.
Divorced. Had me at a wedlock. We're like, hey, we should probably fix this. Got remarried. Tried it again for a few years. And then divorced each other again. And by that time, my sister was along for the ride.
Interesting.
Too, right? So they divorced each other twice. Then they both remarried. My father, before he passed, he actually passed away in 1999. Before he passed, he was basically in the process of getting divorced again, or being divorced by my stepmother. And my mother has since married, divorced, and remarried again. Okay. So the family background, totally different. When I was young, at 4 years old, I can remember standing in a parking lot in Florida. We were on vacation from New York to visit my uncle and my cousins. And this was one of the last memories I have of my mom and dad being together still. I remember standing in a gravel parking lot of a church. I remember going into that church. It was my first church experience. That day, my mother and father both gave their lives to Christ. Well, it didn't do anything practically yet. They lived another year together married, ended up divorced. My father went on to not serve the Lord. My mother did. I watched the Holy Spirit move on our house. I watched my mom live by the Word of God my entire life growing up as a kid. I watched my father become a successful businessman, get everything he ever wanted in life by his own work, and I watched God pursue him. Like, I've almost never seen God pursue a person, except for I would turn around and say, me. I've seen the Lord pursue me. That's my story. God has relentlessly pursued me my entire life. While I've been a follower and not a follower, he's pursued me. So by the time I'm a teenager, I have this rich history in God in my mother's house, this sort of humble, struggling single mother trying to make it work, where God is always intervening and moving on her behalf. We
just
grew up
like watching her learn to live by faith.
Oh, yeah.
Like, truly you saw that.
Amen.
Yeah.
Like, I saw her see things in the Spirit, have things spoken to her prophetically, encounter things in prayer, and then they were happening, and they were impossible for her. At the same time, I watched my father live this fast life he was an entrepreneur. He was, just like I said, a successful businessman. He was a little bit of a shyster. He was the most charismatic person I've ever met. If I told you where I learned...
That makes so much more sense.
If I told you where I...
putting the puzzle pieces together.
I'm understanding.
He's actually building my psyche.
John
as
Garrett,
he's hearing
everybody. John Garrett. You make so much more sense now.
So if I were to tell you where I learned how to love, it was from my father looking me in the eyes and loving me charismatically and just ridiculously. If I told you where I learned how to endure, it was watching my mother on her hands and knees. I have a lot more of my mother's personality. She's got kind of like hard, stoic Italian in her. She's also like driving. I have my father's ability to sort of move through any situation. So growing up, my mother got linked when I was really young, 7 or 8 years old, to a mission-sending organization. They were a camp of people who lived on a mountaintop in upstate New York, spent their lives together eating like government cheese and peanut butter and anything.
Is this a cult? I feel like I've seen this Netflix documentary before.
Anything that people would bring to them, and people would grow up in this group, and then I can tell you missions organizations all around the world that have been influenced by that. I saw radical moves of the Holy Spirit. Again, I saw God do crazy things.
And this is like you're getting to experience like you're being with these people at times.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We would spend half of our summers, because my parents split custody. Yeah. And so half the summer we'd spend with mom, half the summer we'd spend with dad. Every other weekend we'd spend with each one of them, but we lived at my mom's technically. So there were years where we would go from Long Island to upstate New York. It was a 4-hour ride. We'd get off from school on Friday, drive upstate, spend the whole weekend upstate, and drive back Sunday night and go to school Monday. And then we'd spend half the summer there. So my life was immersed in this. And it was like, from when summer started, it was camp meetings. And camp meetings were 3 meetings a day of Holy Ghost. You never know when it's going to end. A dinner bell, a lunch bell. And if there was any time in between, kids, just go get lost on the 170-acre farm. And we did. And so, there's all sorts of a spectrum of, I look back theologically, I look back at all sorts of different things that were weird, but there was no doubt that I experienced God and learned how to taste his presence in that place.
And like deep faith building.
And I watched
surrender, obedience.
Like my best friends at that time in life was a family of 6 kids. Every one of the kids was born on a different continent. My best friend Paul, he was the one born in Africa. The stories, the people that we would see come in and out of our life and the things God did. It was like I was living this adventure and just watching these people. So we'd go out and play in the woods, and we'd play, with sticks and guns and all these sorts of things, but half the time we were playing pretending we were missionaries. Like literally, we would be running through the woods and, pretending we were. Like it was just crazy, So
we
that
used
was
to do
that was
my older
in
brother
me.
used to like fake slay people in the spirit, and they'd
or just throw them in the river,
faking the words.
So that was in me. It was in my guts. By the time I was a teenager, things had happened to that ministry. It caused it to fall apart. There was a lot of hurt, a lot of brokenness. It was sad, and a lot of that sort of partnered with my father's worldly success to become the critical outside man. All of that was for nothing. Like that was
like you became very cynical. You're saying?
I became very cynical, very critical, very accusatory of all the hypocrisy. But I was turning into the hypocrite myself. And I went through that period of just running into drugs. This was the period when my father's life fell apart, when drugs overtook his life, when he died when I was in high school. Watched that whole process. So I watched everything that I ever had any stock in rise and fall. God, man. And I had this really weird concoction of beliefs and ideas that I was going to be my own God, man. And I was going to make it. I was going to be the rock star that figured it all out. Sure enough, that didn't pan out the way I wanted it to be, the way I wanted it to. I wasn't the man I wanted to be. I was super broken. Really ended up moving back into my mom's basement with my tail between my legs and just fell face first before God. And he rescued me. Like, miraculously, supernaturally, he just rescued me. And it was within just a few short months of him rescuing me that he gave me my wife, who is the symbol of what love in Jesus looks like. She is the fleshed out version of what Jesus to me is. And she has been my whole life since I met her. And that really ended up at a coffee table one day. We were,
It's our first date.
find this like sin deranged.
Also, I'm trying to like coffee. We did another experiment this morning. It failed.
It was an
The
utter
only thing-
failure.
They're
It
big
failed
coffee
hard.
people. I mean, I literally poured a glass of this, and I bet that much was whipped cream, and that much was coffee, and it was awful. So to all the coffee people out there, you should love them.
Man,
I don't get it.
I feel
I'm
so
so
bad
sorry.
that
I'm so
a
sorry.
Mount Kenya single origin.
I
doesn't
tried.
bring you
I keep
joy.
trying. 5 years from now, I'll try again. I'll keep at it.
Oh my God.
Anyways, you're on a coffee date.
Borders books. How do I, this broken kid who's been ravaged by sin and now really likes this girl who's a believer and I'm trying to walk with God, how do I date this girl?
Because she was intimidating. Like her love for the Lord, you're saying.
I don't think there was a lot of things that were. I wasn't intimidated, but I was definitely freaked out. Like I just don't. This is uncharted territory for me. If I get too close to her, I'm going to ruin everything. That was really the way that I was trying to view life at that point. It was God, the way God saved me and healed me. Everything came so quickly that I was like, put a wall around this, and God, you can have whatever you want from me for as long as you need. I don't want to screw this up. Heal me. And so when she came into my life, I recognized this is wild. But I also recognize, so are you. So you better get control quick. And this thought came to me as, why don't we just go to a bookstore? And so I asked her, I was like, you want to go get coffee together? At the time, Borders had built these giant like meccas of coffee and music, right? You can go listen to anything you
Where
want.
you go to hang out.
Right? So it was the monolith prototype of what we all do now. But, it created the space. I said to her, hey, go find a few books.
This was a brilliant idea.
I have a few.
So like, you want to go on a first date with somebody, young man. If you do this, with a girl, this is amazing. She'll love it. Take it, write it down, practice
so what is it?
I just said to her,
Because I still need
let's
date
go get
ideas.
coffee. And I said, you go get 3 books to tell me your story. I'll go get 3 books to tell you my story. We'll sit down at the table and we'll hash it out. So we meet back at the table with our coffee and books, and she throws down this like giant pictorial atlas of Africa. Like the front cover was the head of a lion or something
What
like
a
that.
flex.
And
What a flex.
And I'm looking at this girl like I'm the guy who's got all these missions contacts my whole life. I grew up on the camp on the on the mountaintop.
But you
camp.
feel like a poser.
So I'm looking at her like she's a poser. I'm like,
Of course he is. Of
I'm
course
so
he is.
arrogant.
You're
You're stupid.
It's
And
so
she
funny.
throws
learn
this
quick.
book down, and these are the thoughts, and it actually comes out of my mouth because you know that I don't have the best filter. I go, what do you want to be, a photographer or something? And she looks at me like, what? And I was like,
So did you not know that
No
her
clue.
story at all? Okay.
no clue.
he
She was
didn't.
just a cute
Yeah.
Italian girl from Long
Interesting.
Island. I was like, all right, cool. She throws it, and she looks at me like, who's this joker? All of a sudden, she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, really? Like, what do you know about Africa? She goes, I lived in Africa. And I was like, you're such a liar. You did not live in Africa. She was like, yes, I did. I was a missionary. I was like, oh, so you went on a mission trip.
Yeah.
She goes, no, you jerk. I lived in Africa my entire high school years. And actually, I've not been home very long. And I was going to tell you my story. And suddenly I'm like, oh, God. Like, she just upped the ante. So I'm like, she just put all the chips on the table. Like, this girl now sitting across from me is hot, Italian. I mean, which means she has the potential to feed me the right way. That's all that really means, right?
Spaghetti and meatballs. That's what it means.
Christmas can look right.
Yeah.
We've got the chance, okay? So we've got all that going for her, and my calling is sitting on the table in her hands. Or the things that I've
That you felt in your
dreamt
heart.
of, right, that are in my guts that I have no outlet for, that actually died years ago when I was, smoking weed and being an idiot. These things that died in that ministry that I have called hypocrisy for the last decade are alive and well in this girl sitting in front of me. And now I'm like, oh my God. So that was obviously took a long way still for us to get married, have kids, and all of this to happen. But I knew in that moment that she's either the one or I need to run.
So would you say at that point then, did you idolize, like we were describing other people sort of take these offices and idolize them? Is that what you feel like was your response to it? Or was it a mix of like, I know the Lord is asking me to do this thing, but I also idolize it? Like, what was your relationship with it?
It was very weird. I had no relationship with the church. I had a relationship with local things in my life. Like at that point, there was a pastor God used to turn my life around and a church that I was involved in. But really deep in my heart was a lot of hurt and a lot of anger and frustration towards men of God. Men with callings. I would say back then I didn't think they intimidated me, but looking back, that intimidated me. Because I'd look at them and go, no, they're abusers. Men with callings are just men looking to manipulate you into their calling. And that's a facade.
Yeah.
In fact, I used to joke with her and say, I believe my calling. This is what I used to tell her when we were young. And she still married me. So disclaimer,
So
she
she's
might
more
be more
broken than
psycho
you,
than I
yeah.
am. Right? I used to tell her that I really believe that I have a calling to go to the front row of mega churches and call BS every time I hear it. Like, I'm going to be the guy who stands up until security kicks me out. And
It's like that video. Remember that John MacArthur video of the guy walking down the aisle?
Oh
and
my
security-
gosh.
You know what I'm talking-
that
was going to be you.
I told her, I was like, no, that's me.
Those were the aspirations.
Because
You were
I know-
essentially like the church version of like a streaker.
Oh, like not a streaker.
Like
I-
it's essentially
A
like
mercenary, though,
Yeah.
a secret agent. I was like, I'm a secret agent. I've been trained in the art of BS, of Christian BS. I can see it, smell it, taste it, my job is to find it and call it out in the body. And I mean, the Lord sat me down for years because I
thank
believe
God
that.
we never got there.
No.
Okay, we never got there.
So there was deep.
So you have
hurt.
this like deep brokenness with sort of the office, quote unquote, of these things, and then the Lord leads you into now.
But a
like,
deep
you guys
hunger
get
for
married.
Him.
Yeah, you have a deep desire just for like, I would say the onus of your life, like both of you. When I think about you guys, it has really just been like, you know, like I think one of the things we said in our wedding vows, me and Janelle, was whatever you ask, the answer is always yes.
Yeah, amen.
And like I feel like that's what I think of when I think of you guys, when I think of your family, when I think of everything the Lord has done in you, everything you're doing now. That's the whole equation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think for a lot of people, like, it's a part of the equation. Like,
Sure.
well, what's the Lord saying? What do I feel? What can I afford? What sounds fun? And it's this sort of like pot that everything gets melded into. Like when I think of you guys, like it is true. It's just like, well, what's the Lord saying? Well, we're going to do that. And whatever that looks like. And so the Lord, I want to make sure I want to spend time now. I want to talk about this because the Lord leads you guys into missions.
He does.
The Lord walks you into serving alongside your parents. And you do that for 6 years?
5.5
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 years.
And then right when you guys are feeling the call then to step out of that
Yeah.
was when we actually went on that trip. You didn't even
No,
get
I
to come
wasn't
because you
there.
guys were
Yeah.
gone. It was
Didn't
just
see
John.
those. Yep.
So like how about we talk, what was that process of the Lord leading you? Now you've spent, because you go into missions and it's like, okay, this is what my whole life built up.
Yep.
This is
Yeah.
like, finally,
We're here.
I have found,
Yes.
I have arrived.
Yes.
And you get to do that for 5 years, and you get to see God move, and so many stories that you could sit here and, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, we can do that all day
you
long.
could
We
do it in
could.
fluent Swahili because you had embedded yourself. We are going to be with these people for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And then the
Yes.
Lord starts saying otherwise. So what was that process? Because I think that is the thing that people
Yeah.
are terrified of.
Sure.
Like that I would get to a calling,
Yeah.
quote unquote. You know, what I mean, because we confuse calling and assignment.
Sure.
You know, this is something I talk with the young adults about a lot. Like, my calling is to Jesus.
Yep.
My assignment right now, I'm pastoring here.
Yeah.
We're making films. I get to do some incredible things as part of this church.
Mm-hmm.
For as long as the Lord allows that to be my assignment, cool. But if he doesn't, my calling doesn't change.
That's
Yeah.
the crux. And I'm going to actually jump off in a minute and let Nikki kind of color in for a minute.
Sure.
But I'm going to tell you right now, that's the crux. If you don't, you know, in Monopoly, right? Do not pass go, right? There's the card. Go straight to jail. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. Just go sit and wait until you roll the next thing, you roll the right thing, or you get the next, right? I firmly believe that, and I'm not talking about when we're young and we're exploring and God is asking us to
Sure.
to just, you know, live. When you're young, you have an opportunity to live with reckless abandon. There's a certain grace for that
Yeah.
because that's part of growing up, right? But as we mature in the Lord, we take on more responsibility, and we take on more ownership for what is actually ours and what's the actual assignment. Okay, there is a point in every believer's life, and this is the come up the mountain moment. And if it doesn't happen, it will stunt a believer for the rest of their walk. There's a point where the Lord calls you as a part of the congregation. Every one of you is called to come up this mountain. And you can keep serving, you can keep being a part of the group, and you can watch the others go up and down. You can watch others come meet with me and tell you what they see. You can watch others learn from God and speak messages, and you can learn through their learning. But in every believer, and this really should be at the beginning, and I actually fault the church leadership at large for not making this entrance, like you said, beholding. Discipleship begins with beholding God himself. It's not something you get to. We don't build to eventually behold God. We are called to first and foremost be lovers of God and be loved by God. And that process is a process of bowing our knee to Jesus as King before him face to face, coming to know who he is, submitting our lives to him as Lord and leader of our lives, and his word as the Bible truth that rules our life. That has to happen in order for any call to be effective.
The only place that everything can flow from.
Because otherwise your allegiance, it is to the call, it's to the assignment, it's to your usefulness in the moment.
And what happens when the assignment changes, or when this was my issue, is like, okay, I felt the Lord asked me to start making films. Well, then it didn't go into like A-list stardom like I was expecting when I was 19, and it crushed me. It crushed me because I had expectations that the Lord he never gave me the grace for.
That's right.
That wasn't the point of it. The point was, can you make this thing for your church? And if I use it past that, cool. And the next thing was, can you make this thing with your church and for your church? And my mind immediately went, okay, and you're going to use it past that in this way. And when I didn't get what I wanted out of the quote-unquote call, when I didn't get the expected outcome of the assignment, it destroyed me. Now, it destroyed me to a place of eventually, after years, I allowed it to be crucified. Still working on pieces of that. But I see now, 10, 12 years later, I look back and I see so many pieces where I had done you know what I mean? I had conflated my assignment in that moment with my calling. And so if that wasn't going well, then I sucked. If this thing wasn't working out, well, then I have no value. And it took years. It was actually the season when we went on this trip to Tanzania where the Lord was doing that in me, that I'm a son first. That's it. Because it is really the difference. What you're saying is the difference between teachers and fathers. He goes, you have a bunch of teachers. You don't have any fathers. A teacher goes, this is what I learned. You can learn it too. A father goes, come here. Come here. Let's do this together. Like, let me show you what I've learned.
And if you can live that way, you can invest everything in every moment. And yet, when God says, awesome, that was beautiful, now give it to me.
In fact, that's how you have to live.
Yes.
Exactly.
You have to live that you are giving every part of yourself, every part of your focus to exactly what he's calling you in that moment to do.
As if you're going to die there.
Yeah, and that's it.
And
if
at any moment
to
he
move
can.
You, it's not. It feels devastating.
So
right?
what was that process for you?
Well,
because you were leaving family, like you had felt. I'm sure, like we've landed here, and I get to be a part of this with my family.
I mean, it was a beautiful season.
Yeah.
It was a season, like we're saying, that I didn't think would come to an end, because actually, when he called us home is when we were getting the most momentum in the season. So, like, we were getting entrance into villages that we were working to get entrance into for years.
How do you divide? Because that's a quote unquote prosperity. You can look at it that way.
Look at the way the Lord has blessed us.
That's a real tough thing to divide, because it's an easy way to defend. Well, this is why we're supposed to be here, because we see the momentum. So how did you know that this was not what the Lord was asking you to do?
Well, we started. All right, so we were going to purchase property, looking all around for property. Nothing
in Tanzania.
In Tanzania, we are planting home. Nothing worked out. We noticed how in like different areas of our life, whether it was visas, schedules, just things started to like not align,
but there was also another seed being planted at the same time,
and not like come through. And so we're like, what's going on? We begin to hear the Lord say, your time is coming to an end. And he was using a lot of the circumstances to speak that. And there was like this restlessness in our heart, like, oh, wow, I think we're going to be moving. And it took the Lord, literally, he spoke to me out of Ezekiel when he says, I am not sending you to a people of a different tongue. I'm sending you to a people of your own tongue, and they will hear you. And it was like clear as day to me, okay, Tanzania is over. I'm going back to language. I'm going back to an English-speaking nation, right? And through a series of events, he led us to Orlando, which is where we are today. The other word he gave us was, I'm leading you to a people, And so we can say Orlando as a place, but it actually was to a people that he wanted to build. And so the process for me, listen, when you give everything, like I saw Tanzania to the end. I raised my kids there. They were beginning to speak the language. Like, this is what I was living for. I thought my life was pointing to this in every area. And the hard part for me after transitioning back home, like our response to the Lord, like you said, has always just been yes. Like, whatever the cost is, it's yes. If it means losing everything, if it means whatever the details of it, the answer is yes. The hard part for me, and I know this sounds like silly, it was the title. And I'm not a title person by any stretch. Like, you're a pastor. I have the respect for a title, right? Like Pastor Steve, whatever that might be. But if I'm sitting in a room with you, we're peers. In a sense. And so
you don't mean the title like because you didn't have one. You just mean it felt like, well, what are we then?
I felt like
we're not
a part of
anymore.
my identity was being stripped.
Yeah.
And the Lord, it took a year or two to like really work through that really at the center of it, I'm just his child. That's my title. My title is that I've been bought and paid for, by his blood, and that is the place that I'm to operate from, is that he has given me everything that, I don't know how to phrase it. He's empowered me to live that out at whatever that might mean, whether it's being a missionary in Tanzania, whether it means being a mom, working at home, being a student, being a business owner, like whatever the next is, he's giving you, he's empowering you to do it.
Can I go back?
I'm
and
not
fill in some details?
doing justice here. I'm sorry.
Because I think a lot of what you said, if maybe I'll just fill in a little bit of details. So, kind of coming off the last idea, and some of what you were saying is, we were at a point in our ministry where everything we had established was beginning to open the doors that you work for in life. Like you give your life to something, you go to school, and then finally the job happens, and then that first job, which is entry level, it starts to open doors. You put in the time, and eventually you're like, this is going to pay off. I'm going to be able to buy a house with this, right? Well, the same thing happens in our minds and our lives everywhere you go. And, we had put in the time at this point. We had served as youth pastors before we ever went to Africa for years, right? We had served as helpers to other pastors and youth pastors for years. Then we finally got to Africa. We spent years in the field laboring alongside her parents. Yeah. And in some cases thinking that we were building the foundation for what would be a long-term ministry. Like it would be the calling that we lived out. Ready to buy land. The Lord starts speaking to me about writing a book, which he had not allowed me to consider for years. And as we begin this prayer process of, okay, God, how do we take the next step to sort of reinvest our whole lives into this calling you've placed on us? A few things start to happen. The first thing is her brother, who is in the Middle East, invites us to come share some time with him in refugee camps as the ISIS conflict in Syria was breaking out. We start doing that.
And at this point, they've been missionaries to Turkey for
years.
20 years?
Yep.
Yeah,
There's a rich history
15,
at that point.
Yeah, 15
It was about 15 years for them at that point. Another missionary who we're connected to was starting to work with some really closed people groups, even in East Africa. And he starts passing through, and it was a weird connection that we were making. And so our hearts start stirring for something, because we had always believed that crisis situations were something that we were called to. Really deep, like those who've never heard the word, or those who were in intense persecution. And these doors start opening for us. So as we're praying about land in Tanzania, we're actually asking God, are we moving to another region? And we begin to pray, and now, Lord, are we moving to the Middle East? Are we moving to another part of Tanzania? As we're going to anchor into this calling, God, we want to establish rightly. Are we pairing permanently with Nikki's parents? What is it? And in prayer, we begin to sense the Lord. Now, I'm not saying, thus saith the Lord from heaven. I'm saying we begin to sense in our spirits, like, what? It's like a muzzling. And in our spirits, we get this sense that the Lord is saying, I'm not talking about this. Your assignment in this field is not finished.
Yeah.
So between us, the more this develops over weeks and months, we're like, I don't think we're supposed to be asking God about moving yet. In fact, I have a sense that the Lord really wants us to complete this year, this ministry season term, and we'll see what happens. Well, that's what we did. We kind of let it go, but it was in the background somewhere. And dear friends of ours who were working in Orlando, they are our best friends in life up to this point. We had raised kids with them, the first people who ever watched our children without us, being around. They were establishing something that God had shown them in Orlando. They came out to be with us for a trip in Tanzania. We climbed the mountain together, ministered to people. We saw people healed. We saw awesome things happen. It's totally outside their ministry norm.
Sure.
You can identify with that. We get to the bottom of the mountain, drive 8 hours home, land on our property, cross the threshold of the door, and in the spirit, I don't know how to explain it. I just feel like this thing pulled off my mouth. And in my spirit, I feel like I get this sense, you can talk now. And I look at Nikki and I'm like, what is going on? And she goes, I don't know, but she's like, I feel totally different. And I was like, I get the sense that we are able to talk about what we've been wanting to pray about for 6 months, but the Lord has told us not to. We sat at the table that night and asked them to share their hearts about what God was doing in Orlando. And out of their mouth comes all of the same language God's giving us in prayer for months. And we're sitting there and our heart starts to break because they're putting words to what we've been struggling to pray but not allowed to forever. As that happens, we just sort of join hands and go, okay, God, you've given us this common language. You've given us this common sense in the spirit. Lord, lead us.
Yeah.
Just show us what that means. For months, we thought, okay, we've got to connect them to Africa. That's a thought. We were like, maybe we're going to build a ministry in Turkey because that's the midway point, and now we can.
Isn't it so interesting when you're trying?
You start scheming.
How easily it becomes self-centric, though.
Sure.
How easily it becomes like, it literally revolves around
what God's called you to do.
What would make me feel the most comfortable and the least pain. But like what the Lord was actually doing in that was calling you into the least comfort.
Yeah.
And because I remember years ago you called it. You said the Lord called you into Mickey Mouse's backyard.
Oh,
said like the last place on planet Earth.
I'm sorry, Orlando. I love you,
we
but
love
I
you,
hate
but
you.
Like, and you guys you've been stationed there. You've been there 2017, something like that.
Midway through 2016.
8 years, basically.
Yeah, September 2016.
And the Lord plants you there.
Yes.
And just spends the next, we don't even have time for that, but spends the next year just crucifying
For a
you.
year and a half, we got wrecked.
Just
wrecking us.
tearing you limb from limb.
Yeah.
Like leading you into the wilderness to test and see what was in
The
your
process
heart.
of coming home from the call.
Deuteronomy 8.
Yeah.
That was our story.
That process of coming home from the call was 10 times harder than leaving for it. To sell everything, get ready
interesting?
for Africa.
There's an
You know,
incitement to that.
Oof. Yep. Coming back, I was afraid. I don't want to need domestic things. I don't want to need a car and a mortgage. I don't want to need all that. I want to live with the freedom and excitement of a tent and a backpack, and God can say, and it was a lot easier to do that when you didn't have all these attachments.
Yeah.
And I was afraid of the attachments.
Yeah.
And the Lord just began a season of, no.
So then
you said yes to anything.
18 months into that, well, before that, but somewhere in that 18-month process, he opens your heart to what? What was the next part of the journey?
Yeah, after 18 months of praying and fasting and God literally paying our mortgage miraculously, not our mortgage at the time, our rent.
Like money on the doorstep, like in the mailbox.
Under the mat,
like
people
straight
showing up.
Yes. Well,
Eviction notices.
We're like, God, can we get a job? Like, can we, get back into the workforce? And it was a clear no.
And why do you think that was?
Oh, consecration.
Yeah.
Because I look at it too, and I go, I think had John not been crucified in that, and he had gone straight back into the work field, that your dad, that spirit of your dad, that thing that broke you and led you into Tanzania, I think that would have risen up, and you would have been the provider, and you would have been the striver, and I know that, but like. I think had you not spent a year just helpless.
Humbled.
That foundation.
Helpless.
Totally humbled and helpless, yes.
It broke you into a place
foundation
where
is
you
set.
can appreciate what the Lord's doing now.
So spoiler, we own a pizzeria and a manufacturing company, a bread manufacturing company, right? The Lord miraculously spoke
The
that.
best pizza on planet Earth.
Always
This is not a joke, okay? This is not a joke, okay? I went on, when Janelle was pregnant with our first...
on planet Earth.
I'm going to prove it. When Janelle was pregnant with our first, with Manna, we went on our baby moon to Italy. And so we flew out of Miami, and so we flew into Orlando. We spent 2 or 3 days with you guys. This is 19, so Pinez has been around a couple years at that point.
Yes.
2 or 3 days with them, 2 weeks in Italy, went to Naples, and did the world's best pizza, stood in line for it for whatever it was, an hour, spent 2 weeks in Italy, and then come back 2 or 3 more days with you guys at Pinezza. Still, my favorite pizza on planet Earth.
It's flattering.
Thanks,
It's not a joke.
Thank you.
And I say this all the time when they're not in the room. This is not a joke. So if you're in the Orlando area, people always go to Orlando for vacation. Pinezza. Pienezza. We'll put it on the screen right now. Do I have that power? Am I allowed to do that? It's on the screen right now. Go check it out.
Awesome.
Go check it out. I mean, you guys have a pretty steady influx of people from our church coming through the restaurant.
At least once a
like,
month.
I get texts all the time
I love it.
of just like a picture of the inside of the restaurant from somebody in the church,
It's
like all the
amazing.
time.
So double back to the seeding of what's in our hearts and spirits.
Yes, because we got to land the plane now.
There's this fat little Italian kid that lives inside me, and that kid has been staring at pizza men make pizza since he's 4 years old, going, "That's my hero," right? And that was always what I wanted to do as a young man, kind of juxtaposed against this missions call. The Lord, in His faithfulness, has brought us. He is categorically taking us to every dream we've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
That's what God's doing.
That's interesting.
By not chasing the dream.
Yeah, by chasing Him,
Yeah.
but in the order that He wants to do it, not the
And
order
with
that we would
deep
set up.
crucifixion in between each
my
receipt
gosh.
of the dream.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
And-
the key.
No doubt.
Yes.
No doubt. And that moment, listen, everything is a walk to the cross and a resurrection,
Yes.
which invites you to a new cross and new resurrection, because Jesus
And-
Christ is
yeah.
endless and His goodness and love is endless. And if you want to know Him more, He's going to say, "Come with me again. Let me show you another way. We can die together, and another way I'll raise you again."
The stakes always get higher.
And that's where
It's always
Yeah.
a leveling up.
there's a transition where you go from God, no, I'm not good enough that you need to crucify me again. There's a place in walking with Jesus where you recognize,
Yeah, the cross is life.
Lord, where's the next place
You know?
that I need to die so I can see you new? Where's the next place that I don't know you, that something in me needs to go to a cross in order to be able to see a part of you I've never known?
Yeah.
And like we're wrestling with that right now.
Yeah.
And the truth is God's given us this thing that for the last 6 years is business, and it's taken again. We've invested everything.
Yeah.
We've given it all. This is now longer than we spend in missions.
Yeah.
And we're at a time where everything's kind of being re-upped. And my posture before the Lord is it time to give it all away? Is it time to give it all away? Is it time to sell it? Is it time to double down? God, I need your word.
Mm-hmm.
Because the natural progression is it's business, build it bigger.
Mm-hmm.
We've earned it, we've built a foundation, now you can multiply. That's a natural foundation. God established that order in human living. From the beginning, go forth, multiply, tame and subdue the wild land out there.
Yeah.
But living by the Spirit means not everything that you see or not everything that you are supposed to get to is for right now. Moses didn't understand that his calling was for a later time after he would be transformed and tried and tested. He thought it was immediate. It ended up in murder, and he had to flee. And then, after a season of fleeing to the backside of the desert, every dream and part of his identity was dead and crucified. God shows up again and says, hey, buddy, everything that's in you is in you because I put it there. And I want to talk. And that's been the story of our walk with God. And it doesn't matter if it's a business or a calling. It matters if it's birthed in obedience and intimacy with God that's established on his word. It's established in the covenant of community and communion with others. It's, people ask us sometimes, like we recognize that we're in a phase in life where there are times now where we're the old people in the room. In this room right now, like, I'm the old guy. That's weird. It's new territory for me in this last few years. So we get people, hey, should I marry her? Should I do this? Should I make that decision? Should I? And the beginning of that conversation is always this for me. Hey, yes, it's important to answer the question, is that the right one? But what's more important is to answer this question. Are you willing to die for her, for him, for it? Because if you're not willing to go to the cross for it, you won't find resurrection life through it. If you're willing to die for this thing that you're going to do, if that's the way you'll walk into it with Jesus, then you'll find life in it. I can't tell you the process and I can't tell you the time because everybody's walk to the cross is different. But to me, that's the beginning of the grounds. And then from there, if you can answer that question, yes, then we can start to break down. Okay, let's look at wisdom. Let's get the counsel of the elders. You want to make a decision financially? The grace is found in the people around you who have walked faithfully with finances. You want to make a decision in marriage? Don't ask the people your age around you.
The chumps who have never done
Go
it.
find people who've been through the mud with a family and endured and can look you in the eyes and go, I'm going to tell you, son or daughter, this is what it's going to take. That's what you need to walk into. For all intents and purposes, like, I love the dynamic anointing that can fall on a 30-year-old. The stock in what they have to offer in the kingdom and in direction for my life, I'll listen to a message, break it down, take some of those notes and be like, thank you, Jesus. But I'm going to go to a sage. And not a sage who's hardened and not a sage who lives with reckless abandon and 100% allegiance to Jesus. That's who I'm going to go to when I say I need someone who can look into my eyes and counsel the inner parts of my soul. Like, I'll talk to you. We'll hash out things. But when I'm in an existential crisis, I call your dad.
True story.
Pastor Jeff. True story.
True story.
I may be like, hey, Steve, for accountability purposes and because I need to pray and I want to hash out some theological ideas, what are we doing? Let's do this. As friends, we do that. But when I need somebody who's got an anchor and who's driven through storms, Pastor Jeff.
You guys, you're 10-ish years older than me, but I still even look at you guys as like, not the sage, but it's one of the things I value about you guys so much is I watch you in the next season of what I'm about to have to do. You know what I mean? Your kids and like the life you guys are walking. Like I see sort of the next stage of what we're doing. And I see just the faithfulness that you guys have walked it. I truly can say, like, I knew you right before missionaries.
That's right.
Yes.
I knew you as missionaries, and I now know you as business people.
Yes.
And I watch you walk no different as business people than really I knew you as missionaries.
Yeah.
I watch the way you hire people and give them opportunity because you see the Lord highlight them. I watch the way you walk with the people working in those businesses as though they're family. And as though I watch the way it operates in a covenantal, like communal, like we're doing this as a group, whether your last name's Garrett or not. Like we're doing this because I feel the Lord drew you into this. Like I watch that and I like that's what has always fascinated me with you guys. Like that's what even made me want to draw close in the first place. But I that's what I constantly take from. We just talk when we talk Monday. We talk Monday, and I can hear him in the background like probably rolling dough balls. And I was just telling him, like, I just feel like one of the things I'm struggling with right now is I just feel useless. I'm just like, for whatever reason, like something I'm wrestling with right now is this sense of uselessness. And because of the brokenness that led you into missions, when you guys lost everything financially and you were striving and the Lord let the rug pull out, and that's what drew you into missions.
Yes.
And then you came out of missions and the Lord broke you and crucified you and made you spend a year and a half useless. You speak from a place of experience and wisdom when you say, Steve, there are things you can learn and experience with the Lord in your uselessness that you'll never be able to receive in your, quote, usefulness. Because you're like, even in your most useful, think of how useless you are to the Lord and what he's actually capable of doing. And your message was very simple. It was like, embrace the uselessness, embrace the total dependence on his Spirit, be in that place and be okay with that. I got to go. There's a customer coming in. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not, but that's essential. Like, and that is, like, you guys are no different. That is pastoral, and that is missionarial, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, like, the office doesn't matter. And, like, you are people that I look at and I just see, everybody can say that in theory, and we all know that that's true. We all know that Paul was like, hey, I'm just following Jesus the way the rest of you should be following Jesus. Call me whatever you want. I'm just trying to set a standard. And there's very few people like that. There's very few Francis Chans who, like, when it finally starts to explode is when he senses the Lord's voice to walk away. And that's not everybody's call. I totally understand that. But the call is, whatever you ask of me, the answer will always be yes. Like your guys' walk, like, I can attest to with sincerity, your guys' walk has been one bloody road. Like, what are you asking? The answer is yes. You don't even need to finish. Just give me the details of what you need from me. But whatever you're asking, the answer is yes. We don't even need to have the conversation. Tell me whatever you want, Lord. Give me whatever details you're willing to give. But I don't need, if that's what you want, say less. And I see that. And also, One Bloody Road, is that available on Amazon?
It's not.
Where can you get it? Other than We Are One Conference 2024 this weekend.
One Bloody Road. It's out of print at the moment.
Oh, wow. It's sold out, folks. You heard it here first. John Garrett. John Garrett. But, well, if you happen to find in a thrift store, One Bloody Road by John Garrett, or does it say J.G. Garrett?
You can email, if you legitimately want a copy of One Bloody Road, email jggarrettbooks@gmail.com. And
this was the
I will
book
personally correspond.
Yeah, this is the book that the Lord birthed out of that, like, season of brokenness for you. And it really is that process of, like, what do you want? You want the ministry? You want the success? You want the business growth? Or you want Jesus?
Yeah.
Maybe you get both. Maybe. But you only get both if truly all you wanted was Jesus. And he decided that it was in all of our best interest that you get the next. And if you get that, C.S. Lewis, seek earth and miss heaven entirely. Seek heaven, get earth thrown in. Actually, I want to finish. We'll close out with this. I text you this. I don't know if you ever even saw it because you're terrible at reading your phone. But I was reading Tozer a couple weeks ago.
You've been hammering me on this for days now.
He's just terrible at texting back.
Years.
We'll close with this.
Specifically since I got here. Hi, buddy. I love you. You're a jerk.
This is A.W. Tozer. Pursuit of God, I think. The man he's talking about how every other tribe received a portion of land as their inheritance, and then he stops at the Levites, and he goes, you get me. And there had to have been a piece of that where they're like, but where do we go and live? Like, where are we going to set up shop? Where are we going to build? You know what I mean?
That's the call.
And he goes, you get me. Yeah. And Tozer's point is they didn't realize in that moment that they got the best allotment of every tribe that was part. That was literally what more could you ask? Yes. And he says, the man who has God for his treasure has all things in one. Many ordinary treasures may be denied him, or if he's allowed to have them, the enjoyment of them will be so tempered that they will never be necessary to his happiness. Or if he must see them go, if he asks you to sell it all, if if he asks you to get rid of the businesses, if he must see them go one after one, he will scarcely feel a sense of loss, for having the source of all things, he has in one all satisfaction, all pleasure, all delight. Whatever he may lose, he has actually lost nothing, for he now has it all in one, and he has it purely, legitimately, forever. Tanzania didn't get to last forever. Maybe the Lord sends you back in 5 years.
Okay.
Maybe you're somewhere else. I know your guys' heart would be to be in the nation somewhere.
Sure.
But right now he has you in Orlando. And maybe someday he does it all over again. Maybe.
Yeah.
But if not,
Maybe not.
he has in one purely, legitimately, forever.
Amen.
If he has Jesus.
Right.
Oh, I love you guys. Who wants to pray us out?
It's been fun.
Go ahead, honey.
Me?
Nikki doesn't want to do it.
All right.
She prayed before,
Go
though.
for
Give
it.
her grace.
Go for it.
Jesus, it's an honor to walk with you. It's an honor to know you and be known by you. I think of David's words. What is man that you are mindful of him? God, what are we? Who are we that you consider us?
Yeah.
And yet you invite us, Lord. You invite us to come see you face to face, to know you. Father, I pray that our time together today, Lord, that it would plant seeds and bear witness in the hearts of those who listen. I pray,
Yes,
Father, that
God.
you would use this time to unlock inside of people the mystery and the adventure of walking by faith in you, Jesus. Lord, I know that we have seen a coming people, a bride, a true bride who hungers. Lord, the words in the New Testament, the Maranatha word, the come Lord Jesus, come cry, that it's more important than anything else. A people who will long for you and your closeness, your return over everything else, Father God. Lord, I know that's what you seek in this earth. That's what you are developing for your son, Jesus. So, Jesus, we place you above everything we are. We place you above everything we do. And we ask that you would use our time that's left on this earth to seed that into the lives of those who've caught a glimpse of heaven. God, we pray for the salvation of those who are listening who might not know you. And we ask for those who saw a spark, Father, that you would pour out your spirit on them even now. That there would be a move in your body, that we would recognize everything is sacred.
Yes, Lord.
Everything is sacred. Our recreation, our work, our relationships, our time, our money, everything is yours, Lord Jesus. We give it all to you and we thank you. I pray for We Are One. I thank you for the time on this podcast. I thank you for the time with Steve. Lord, for all those behind the scenes who've made this possible, Lord, and for the way they've honored us. And we bless your name together. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.